Isn't it fascinating? Global security is becoming more and more fragile. There's the tension between Trump and Zelensky. And in all of this, crypto is going up. That's not too intuitive, right? We see Hex and PulseChain leading all other cryptocurrencies. Now, is this potentially a long-term turnaround? Or are we going to continue to see what we've seen in the last month? Yes, Hex and PulseX are in the green, but if all of the other assets are continuing to go down, it's very hard for the stronger assets to remain strong. Now, the Hex ecosystem hasn't always had a great time. This is a very long-term chart of Hex. And it's not the US dollar chart, it's a chart relative to Bitcoin. So how much more performance did we get with Hex relative to BTC? And unfortunately, since September of 2021, Hex tended to underperform Bitcoin by 99.6%. Now, it doesn't look like that much on this chart, but that's because this is a logarithmic chart, right? On a linear scale, we do see the absolute value destruction. But yeah, have we finally seen the floor? Does it make sense to potentially buy Hex and PulseChain now? Have a look at this chart here. This is DeFi Llama. It looks at how much capital is currently locked up across various blockchains. And this shows here PulseChain. At one point, the PulseChain ecosystem had almost 1 billion of total value locked. Now we are at 350 million. Now, a lot of this volatility actually comes from price volatility, not necessarily from in and outflows from the blockchain. When we look at the same chart measured in PLS, it's much more constant. Unfortunately, with that chart, we also see that since beginning of the year, PulseChain gets less and less adoption. The long-term, somewhat positive trend seems to have turned around. And of course, a lot of this is also related to Richard Hart, the founder of the Hex ecosystem, that now gets searched by Interpol, by the international police. So here's the news at the end of 2022. Hex crypto founder Richard Hart with Interpol red notice. And that's because of apparent tax evasion. And that's of course a problem for the growth of the ecosystem. Now have a look at this. This is the net cumulative flow of the PulseChain bridge. So how much capital is actually getting bridged to PulseChain and how much capital gets withdrawn. So on this chart, we do not see the price fluctuations of those assets. We simply see direct deposit and withdrawal activity. And we haven't seen much growth in the last 1.5 years, roughly. And that's the problem of PulseChain. There is no growth. To get the full length video, feel free to simply subscribe over here. Then you get it recommended by the algorithm.